The last thing I said to Ren Sable was, "I'll be back before snow." That was the 9th of October, 1874. 9 years later, almost to the day, I turned my horse south toward Copper Creek. That's a long time to let a promise sit in the cold. I won't pretend otherwise. I want to tell it straight, the way it happened, because the truth is the only thing I have left to give her that costs anything to carry. The drive that autumn was supposed to be the last one I needed. 3 seasons of trail work had put enough aside that I could come back to Ren with something solid, not a fortune, but a foundation. Silas Pruitt ran the herd north out of Chalk Valley with 11 hands, and I was one of them. Silas was a good trail boss, the kind who had a word for every situation and the sense to mean every one of them. He died on the crossing of the Garnet River 3 days out, when his horse went over in a flash flood and the current took him before any man could reach him. Nobody saw it clearly in the dark and the rush. By the time we pulled what was left of the drive into the railhead at Decker's Flat, 2 of the hands, Colby, who I hadn't liked from the start, and a man named Rains I hadn't known long enough to form a view on, had decided that the 31 head missing from the count were my doing. I won't say they knew it was a lie. Men get frightened when a trail boss dies sudden, and they start looking for somewhere to put the fear. A frightened story told with enough conviction can do tremendous damage to a man who rides alone and has nobody at the railhead to speak for him. The territorial judge at Holt's Crossing took 4 days to hear it, and 3 minutes to decide. 18 months in the Millbrook Territorial Facility for cattle theft. I sat with that. The hardest part of Millbrook wasn't the work or the walls. It was the not knowing. It was lying awake in the dark thinking about Ren, alone, at Copper Creek with 2 hives and 40 acres, and no help coming, and having no way to reach her that I could trust. 3 letters I sent in the first year through the facility mail. The 4th I tore up, because a 4th letter after 3 that came back unanswered starts to sound like a man who doesn't trust his own account. The 5th I kept in my head instead. I wrote it there so many times I could recite it from start to finish without stopping. I still can. By the time I walked out of Millbrook, it had waited long enough that I knew it had to be said in person or not at all. The truth came out eventually, the way it does when it has enough patience. One of Rains's other dealings caught up with him in the spring of 1876. The judge who sorted that mess happened to look back at the Pruitt Drive records and found what was there to find. My record was cleared by June. I walked out of Millbrook on a Tuesday morning with an exoneration on territorial paper, my hat, and the clothes I'd gone in wearing, which fit me differently than they had before. I didn't go south. I told myself a man doesn't ride back to a woman he loves with nothing but a letter saying he wasn't guilty of the thing they locked him up for. I told myself she'd have moved on by now, found somebody decent and steady, built the life she deserved without waiting on a man who couldn't keep his one promise. I told myself showing up would be an imposition on whatever peace she'd made, that the kindest thing was to stay away. I told myself all of this for 7 years. I worked good ranches. The craw operation up in Sable Flats for 3 seasons, then the Dunmore spread outside Copper Grade for 2. A season of fence work along the Garnet River that I took because the river was where Silas had died, and I thought I owed him something, though I couldn't have said what. Everywhere I worked I kept my word, and gave no cause for complaint. I didn't drink to excess. I didn't do anything that would have embarrassed Ren Sable if she'd been watching, because the truth is, she was always watching in the back part of my thinking. I carried her name the way a man carries a stone in his boot, always there, always reminding him which way is home. There were moments, coming off a long ride in the dark, sitting at a bunkhouse table with strangers, waking in the night to wind in unfamiliar country, when the weight of it was more than I'd reckoned on. I'd lie there, wondering if the homestead was still hers, if the creek still ran clear in September, if anyone was tending the hives. I told myself it was no longer my concern. I was wrong about that too. What finally made me turn south was nothing dramatic. I was riding in off the Dunmore South Range on a September evening, cold coming, and I saw the rancher's wife come to the door with a lantern held up for her husband crossing the yard. A small thing. The kind of thing people do without noticing they're doing it. And something in me that had been building for 7 years ran out of arguments. I rode into Copper Creek Flats on the afternoon of the 3rd of October. The aspens had gone yellow. The creek ran low and clear in its banks the way it does when the season has turned and the country is settling in for winter. I knew every bend of that road. I had ridden it in my mind so many thousands of times over 9 years that it felt more familiar than any road I'd actually traveled. The smell of the creek came to me before I could see it. That particular green and cold smell of moving water in October that is different from any other season. I had dreamed of that smell in Millbrook. I had dreamed of the sound the aspens made, and the way the light came low and sideways across the flats in the afternoon. I had dreamed of those things so often I wasn't entirely certain I was riding toward them and not dreaming again. My horse's hooves on the packed road convinced me otherwise. I saw the hives first, 8 of them, set back from the creek in their neat rows, white boxes in the afternoon light. Wren had kept 2 when I left. She had built something here, while I was convincing myself she'd moved on. The gate was the same wood rail affair, the iron latch bar I had set myself in the autumn of 1873. I stopped my horse on the road and looked at it. Biscuit came around the side of the barn before I'd decided what I had any right to do next. He was the mule I had left, 12 years old when I went away, which made him 21 now and considerably gray about the muzzle, but he moved with the same unhurried deliberateness I remembered. He walked to the gate, put his nose over the top rail, and regarded me the way a mule regards a person he knows, without urgency, with a patient certainty, as if to say, "There you are, I've been waiting for you to come around to it." I got down from my horse. I put my hand on his nose. He didn't pull away. "Hey, Biscuit," I said. My voice came out rough. He pressed his muzzle into my palm and held it there. I heard her come through the side gate of the bee yard. I didn't turn right away. I stood with my hand on the mule's face and heard her footsteps stop. And then there was a long silence, in which the creek made its sound, and the aspens made theirs, and nothing else did. "Jonas Cale," she said, not a question. I turned. 9 years, and Wren Sable looked exactly like the woman I remembered, and entirely unlike her. She was lean from the work, her hair pulled back under the wide-brimmed hat she wore in the bee yard, canvas apron on, a smoker, still trailing a thread of white in her hand. She had more silver in her hair than I remembered, and her hands were brown from the outdoor work, and she was wearing boots I didn't recognize. Everything else about her was exactly as I'd carried her for 9 years. She had not moved toward me or away. She was watching me with the steadiness she applied to everything that mattered, not closing the door, not opening it yet, just watching. "I owe you a great deal of explanation," I said. "You owe me 9 years," she said. Her voice was level, not angry, the voice of a woman who has decided to hear what there is to hear before she decides what to feel. I told her, all of it, the drive, the crossing, Silas in the river, Colby and Rains, and the count that came up short. Millbrook and the 18 months and the letters I sent that I couldn't be certain arrived, the exoneration, the 7 years on other men's ranges, and every argument I'd made to myself about why it was better not to come back. I left out nothing that was relevant, and I didn't ornament anything that wasn't. The account took a while. The sun moved. Biscuit at some point drifted away from the gatepost and came to stand near us in the attending way he had, as if he'd followed the conversation and judged it sufficient. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "I wrote to the Millbrook facility in the first year," she said. I looked at her. "The warden wrote back that no one by your name was held there." She said it without accusation, just the plain fact of it. I didn't know what to make of that. That was Millbrook's system. They logged prisoners by registration number in those days, not by name. An administrative practice the territory eventually changed. It hadn't helped me in there, and it hadn't helped her out here. "I'm sorry," I said. "You've said that," she said. "I heard you." She glanced at the smoker, now cold in her hand, and set it down on the porch rail. "I kept Biscuit," she said. "I can see that. I told myself it was because he was useful." She glanced at the mule, who had turned his attention to the gatepost with the detached philosophical air mules take on when the humans around them are settling something. "He isn't, particularly. He's been retired 3 years." Something loosened in my chest that had been tight for 9 years. "Why did you keep him?" I asked. She held my eyes for a moment. "I suppose I kept the gate easy to open for the same reason," she said, "in case there turned out to be one." I unlatched the gate. It swung open smooth, the hinge well oiled. She had kept it oiled. I led my horse into the yard, and she latched the gate behind us, and we walked to the porch, and sat on the step, and talked, until the light left the sky. Then she lit the lamp inside, and made coffee, and we sat at the table, and talked some more. She told me about the hives, how she'd built them up one at a time over 9 years, sold the honey to the Garnet Bend General Store, and then to the Chalk Valley Depot, kept the homestead out of debt through every quarter. $6 a head every year, she said, which is not a fortune, but it is a foundation. She had done it alone, without complaint, without asking anyone for anything, the kind of life that takes a very particular kind of woman to build. I told her I was sorry for the years. She said she knew I was. I said I should have trusted her to hear the truth sooner than 9 years. She said yes, she thought so too, and then she poured the coffee and set 1 cup in front of me and 1 in front of herself, and that was the end of the accounting. We married in November, just ahead of the snow, with the circuit preacher and the Aldrin family from the East Homestead as witnesses. Wren wore a blue wool dress I hadn't seen before, and she'd taken her hair down from the hat, and the preacher was a man named Holt, who said the words quickly and kindly, and then shook my hand, in a way that told me he understood what the occasion had cost. It was cold on the porch, neither of us minded. I have been here 11 years now. The hive's number 14. The honey goes to 3 supply depots, and a hotel in Chalk Valley that pays a premium for the dark fall variety. Biscuit lived to 31, which is a considerable age for a mule, and I buried him in the east corner of the yard where he liked to stand in the afternoons. Wren put a flat stone there. She didn't write anything on it. She said Biscuit wasn't the sort who needed explaining, and I thought she was right. She is rarely wrong about what a thing does or doesn't need. There's a kind of understanding that comes from years alongside a person that can't be gotten any other way. From working together through hard winters and easy ones. From sharing a table. From watching how someone moves in the morning before they're fully awake. I know Wren Sable better now than I knew her before I left, which is something I could not have imagined in the early years of Millbrook, when I thought the life I'd had was simply finished. I don't know what made her keep that mule, or oil that hinge, or leave the gate easy to open for 9 years, with no certainty I was ever coming back. I've asked her. She gives me the same answer every time. She doesn't know. She just never got around to changing it. I believe the first part of that. The second part, not so much. But a man learns, after enough years together, that some things don't need to be named to be true. The hives hum in the spring. The creek runs clear in October. Every morning I latch the gate when I go out, and every evening when I come in off the range it opens easy, the way a well-kept thing does. That's what it is to ride home. That's the whole of it.